What up, YouTube? Welcome to Making a Case, episode 19. Topic: why hierarchy is needed. Let's get it. Hey, what up, YouTube, man? We back. We back at it again. All right. Episode 19 of Making a Case, man. Topic: we need a hierarchy. Just simple and plain like that, right? To be honest with you, before we get started, I'm in great spirits. You know what I mean? Like, not that I'm not always in good spirits, but I feel good. So, it should turn out to be a great episode, based on how I'm feeling. I hope you are feeling great out there as well. Okay. Hope you was productive today. I hope you get your workout in, ate good, all that good stuff. Make sure, you watch that salt intake though, and that sugar be doing us in. Without further ado, of course, excuse me, how rude of me. All right. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Jacob Isom, educator, author, speaker, entrepreneur, father, a little bit of everything. Okay. Back at you. We got two channel norms. We don't attack people, we attack points. And the second one is we don't do all the cussing and derogatory stuff. We are a professional YouTube channel, and it will remain that way. Okay. And if there ever any foul language, it's intentional and it's needed. All right, but we try to refrain from all that, right? Because I'm able to articulate myself when need be. All right. For those of you that may be new to the channel, thank you for watching. Okay. Make sure you subscribe before you leave and like the video. It helps with the algorithm. Making the case is where I take a topic or a question and I make my case, whether yay or nay, whether something is or isn't based on research. Okay. So we're almost done with season one. Probably get about 4 or 5 more episodes, maybe 6. Okay. And then we're gonna move on to season 2, hoping to do bigger and better things. But as I mentioned, please make sure you subscribe, you like, hit the bell so you know when new videos drop. All right. But without further ado, let's get into my opening statement. All right. So why do I say a hierarchy is needed? Now, I don't think it's really up for debate. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with me on that. But I have heard on podcasts and in the YouTube streets before, and it's more so women, if I was to be honest with you, talking about how, we can live in a utopian society where, people just get to live freely and, we don't need police and the army because, people can leave their doors unlocked because we just live in a society where, we all just take care of each other. As good as that may sound, right? It's just not realistic. Hierarchy is not just social, it's biological. Okay. And actually, in one of my pieces of evidence, I'm going to get into that. Okay. So hierarchy naturally forms itself, right? There is hierarchy in the animal kingdom, of course, which we are part of. There is hierarchy in the insect kingdom. In every facet, with every species, whether it's insects or animals, you name it, there are hierarchies. Birds, there's hierarchy, right? There's always going to be one person who establishes itself as a leader or a group of people. Okay, that's where we actually get an oligarchy from, right? So there's always going to be dominant people, whether that's male or female, and then less dominant. And really, that's kind of how hierarchy kind of works. You have some who's more vocal, who are willing to take on leadership roles and principles, and then you have most people are followers anyway, naturally. So, like I said, naturally, a hierarchy establishes itself without it even being spoken, right? It's like an unwritten rule. It's unconscious, right? So a lot of people feel way more comfortable following, just like a lot of people feel way more comfortable working a job versus owning a business, right? Owning a business is tough. Trust, right? So a lot of people do not want that stress and that headache from running a business, right? So they're willing to voluntarily work for somebody and understand that they're going to be under somebody, right? So it's just how it works. So I have three pieces of evidence that I want to provide to you to show you why not only that hierarchy is needed, but that hierarchy is natural. All right. So without further ado, let's get into our first piece of evidence. All right. So let's get into my piece of evidence number one, why there is a need for hierarchy. And I simply have an article called The Case for Hierarchy, right? Simple, right? Which is from Princeton University Press, which, of course, Princeton has some great articles as well as Cambridge and other collegiate places, right? But this is a very lengthy article, but it has some good stuff in it, though. So I might read majority of it. I'll I might be skipping around a little bit, but I'm probably going to read majority of it because it has some great information that I want you guys to hear. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Case for Hierarchy by Wayne Pei. Imagine a country with no social hierarchies. Let's call it equality. People in equality treat each other as equals regardless of age, sex, ethnicity, religion, family background, class, or position in the workplace. There is no clear distinction between the rulers and the ruled. Equality treats all other countries as equals on the global stage, regardless of their size, wealth, or military power. The people of equality regard animals as equals. Even intelligent machines are respected as equal. Equality sounds like an ideal society, but it's a dangerous ideal. In history, efforts to consciously be a large-scale organization or society without hierarchies has failed miserably. Edmund Burke famously criticized the French Revolutionary for seeking to equalize relations of command and obedience in the military and predicted such efforts would lead to the rise of some popular general who understand the art of conciliating the soldiery and who possesses the true spirit of command and who would draw the eyes of men upon themselves and become the master of whole republic. In China's Cultural Revolution, the effort to stamp out social hierarchies similarly led to mass violence and populist tyranny. In contemporary China, the populist legacy of the Cultural Revolution still pours in the political atmosphere, aided by the internet, allows anonymous masses to hound social undesirables into submission. In the United States, the populist backlashes against elites in power, strong men such as Donald Trump, with scant regard and respect for traditional constraints on political power. The effort to combat all forms of hierarchy would not only fail, but may lead to something even worse from a moral point of view. So clearly he's coming with evidence, right, of why hierarchies are needed because other countries throughout history have tried and they have failed, right? To try to live in this utopia, this ideal of equality, which you guys already know my standpoint on equality. It doesn't exist. So time and time again, I'm actually showing you with evidence why equality does not exist. We can just look throughout history, right? But of course, we won't digress on that point. It's worth asking why hierarchy is necessary in the modern world. For one thing, hierarchy is ubiquitous, organizing principle in biology. It helps to explain why evolution produced complex, evolvable mechanisms. With a degree of centralization and connection making, complex biological systems need fewer connections and things run more efficiently. Similarly, hierarchy helps to explain why society produces complex organizations. The only way large human groups can arrive at a common course of action is by hierarchical structuring interpersonal connections. In history, as Peter Turchin explained, societies that were larger and better organized outcompeted smaller and more shambolic ones. Hierarchical organizations were one of the cultural traits that was heavily favored by new selection regime in the Holocene, which roughly started 12,000 years ago with the end of the Ice Age. It's a pipe dream to imagine that a large-scale society, a million or more, a small nation by today's standard, can be organized in a non-hierarchical, horizontal way. Hierarchy in a neutral sense is the only way to organize large-scale society. Just as it's impossible to efficiently connect large numbers of engineered components without hierarchy, it's similarly impossible to connect large numbers of people in an efficient way without a hierarchical structure. social organization. In short, efficiency is a clear benefit of hierarchy. Absolutely, right? If you're talking about a nation or large groups of people, we talk about in the millions, there's no way you're going to be able to control that mass amount of people without hierarchy. It just is nonsensical to think that you can, right? In smaller groups, you can get away with it, right? But millions of people, you just can't get away with it. The efficiency of hierarchy may help to explain why we like hierarchies at some unconscious level. According to one study, an abstract diagram representing hierarchy was memorized more quickly than a diagram representing equality. And the faster processor led the participant to prefer the hierarchy diagram, and participants found it easier to make decisions about a company that was hierarchical, and thus thought the hierarchical organization had more positive qualities. Whatever the negative feelings about hierarchy at the discourse level, it seems that the efficiency benefits of hierarchy in our evolutionary history and practical experience often prompt us to like hierarchy. But efficiency per se is not morally justified. It depends on the ends being pursued. The Nazi built super efficient concentration camps, but they were put to use for despicable persons. Of course, right, absolutely, right. We know evil things such as that. We don't even touch on when it comes to hierarchy, right? But from a moral point of view, we need not endorse hierarchies that seem natural to us, even if they arose for a reason of efficiency. This is not pure theory. Upon reflection, it seems obvious that many of the hierarchies from the past are morally problematic today. As historian Yuval Noah Harari puts it, complex human societies seem to require imagined hierarchies and unjust discrimination. Time and again, people have created order in their society by classifying the population into imagined categories such as superiors, commoners, and slaves, whites, blacks, patricians, plebeians, Brahmins, and Shudras, or rich and poor. These categories have regulated relations between millions of humans by making some people legally, politically, and socially superior to others. But we have changed our moral institutions with time. Today, educated people recognize and condemn the seemingly natural hierarchies of our past history. Most Americans, for example, now endorse statements about equality and reject statements about the value of hierarchy and complain that hierarchies are inhumane, immoral, and undemocratic. The sense of unease with hierarchy comes from an idea of what it means to be modern. The mainstream narrative of modernity in Western societies that traditional hierarchies express and institutionalize unjust values such as racism, sexism, and aristocratic privilege. Modern enlightened thinkers criticize dysfunctional and abuse of traditional hierarchies and argue for the ideas of social equality and individual freedom that set the moral standard for future progress. There remains a large gap between the ideal and the reality, but hardly anybody openly argues for a return to the bad old days of rule by powerful white men from aristocratic families. The default moral position is a commitment to social equality and deep skepticism of the value of traditional hierarchies. So, in the modern view, if we care about the weak, the poor, and the oppressed, we need to reject the particular social hierarchies that characterize past societies. Now, one thing I will say about the point that they were making about like race and things, we know race is a social construction, right? And when we think about it, we know when it comes to the poor and the rich, it's also socially constructed for to be the haves and the have not, right? That's intentional. So I wouldn't even characterize that as part of a hierarchy. Now, it exists hierarchical because of the rich being on top and the poor being on bottom, but that is constructed socially, right? Same thing with race, right? So some of the other things that was mentioned as far as hierarchies, like some is intentional, some is unintentional. Like I was mentioning in my opening statement, like biologically, people naturally go to the forefront and say, hey, we should do this because they think a certain way, right? They have certain competencies and certain skills, right, to lead people. Okay. That happens naturally. When we talk about race and when we talk about wealth and things of that nature, we're talking about something that is implemented, right? And to intentionally place people in different hierarchies, right? Even when we look at gender, gender is more biological, but the gender roles we ascribe to people is more social. So I agree a little bit there. It seems then that social hierarchies are both necessary and considered to be bad. We might need to tolerate them just as we tolerate pornography and other bad things. It may not be possible to totally eliminate social hierarchies from large scale modern society, but we should aim to minimize their social effect. Let's see. We're gonna keep scrolling down. Sorry, I want to get to some good stuff. No. However, their roles in age-based hierarchies by definition change over time. The child will become adult, and then the elder will eventually have the same authority over adult children that her and his own parents had. Moreover, the hierarchy between adult and children and elderly parents often ends with a complete role reversal. Beyond a certain age, the elderly parent often loses the capacity to make decisions due to physical and mental deterioration. Yeah, but that's not what I want to get to. Here we go. Hierarchies between humans and animals are still different. We generally accept that animals should be supporting humans. In Cincinnati, zookeeper had to kill a gorilla that potentially threatened the life of a child. It was a tragedy, but few argue against the principle that human lives should have priority in cases of conflict. Now, it's funny. We love some dogs, though. Now, I will say that. Like, I don't know if everybody agree with that. Well, maybe most people do, but we love some animals. Now, I want to get to this last part. In short, equality is a mirage. The choice is not between a society with no hierarchies and one with hierarchies, but rather between a society with unjust hierarchies that perpetuate unjust power structures and one with just hierarchies that serve morally desirable purpose. Now, I do agree with that, right? We have hierarchies that can be positive and hierarchies that can be negative. Naturally, hierarchy is going to form, and then, as I mentioned with race and with class, pretty much, that those are intentional to kind of be a negative light. So I definitely agree with that. Our task is to distinguish between just and unjust forms of hierarchy and to think a way to promote the good forms and minimize the influence of bad form. Bad forms of social hierarchy can be relatively easy to diagnose. Hierarchies are bad when they become ossified and when they only personally benefit the power holders and harm those at the bottom of the hierarchies, which exists right now in our society, right? There are a lot of hierarchies that benefit some and then don't benefit others. So we definitely need to take a look at our hierarchies and we need to ask ourselves and say, hey, is this a benefit to majority of people? Because we always want to look out for the majority. So for the most part, I think this article actually made its case pretty good. It wasn't much I disagreed with on it. So we're going to move into. All right. So for my piece of evidence number 2 is very similar to my piece of evidence number 1. Why do I feel like hierarchy is needed? Well, is this next article actually kind of makes my point for me. So I won't say too much. I just elaborate as I'm reading. So this article comes from a platform called eCorner by STVP. Never heard of it. First time I'm using it. And the title of it is Hierarchy is Good, Hierarchy is Essential. And let me get to the last part. And less isn't always better. Okay. So let's get into it. Oh, I don't know why it literally went all the way down to the bottom. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me find a good starting place. All right. So hierarchy is inevitable. As our Stanford colleagues Deb Grunfield and Larry Tenden show in a detailed review of research on hierarchy, although the form it takes vary widely, it is impossible to find groups or organizations where all members have roughly equal status and power. There goes that term equal, right? And it's usually about power. Whether researchers study people, dogs, or baboons, hierarchies are evident after just minutes of observation. And when strangers meet for the first time, a hierarchy of leaders and followers begin to emerge immediately. This rapid development of pecking order is seen, for example, in groups of college students who meet in psychology experiments and when strangers start chatting on the street corner. Leaders, followers, and other signs of status differences nearly always emerge along with more subtle roles such as joker, hero, and even scapegoat. Absolutely. I talk about it actually in my last book, right? Everybody has a role, especially in your family, right? You have the jokester, you have the drunk, you have the leader. So you have different roles within your family, and then you have different roles at your workplace. Like some titles are given to you, other kind of naturally form amongst people. Even when there's a group of teachers, right? One would naturally emerge as a leader. So hierarchies naturally just form themselves, like without people even being conscious of it. Organizations that are celebrated for their lack of hierarchy may downplay and reduce status differences, but they always have some people with greater formal and informal power than others and associated pecking orders. An eliminated title such as manager or supervisor doesn't make the hierarchy disappear. For example, there has been a lot of talk lately about Zappos ongoing reorganizations is something they call holacracy. Holacracy? That's weird. Some headlines suggest that the company is getting rid of bosses that isn't quite right. While more power is being pushed down the hierarchy, it persists under the new structure. More responsibility is being placed as people are moving to circles, which sound much like self-managing teams. Even though they have stopped using the word manager for many roles, there are still people who perform what sounds like middle management roles to me. They're also responsible for staffing teams and dealing with employee performance issues. And while Zappos is getting rid of a lot of titles, note that Tony Hesh is still called the CEO. Exactly. He ain't gonna get rid of that title at all, right? So, but it's crazy because even when you look at like modern time when it comes to relationships or marriages, right? You hear a lot of partnerships, right? When clearly, and I literally just asked somebody this the other day, like I've never I think I might have said this before. I've never met a woman who said they did not want a man to lead, which clearly denotes hierarchy. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody is going to be subservient, somebody is going to be under somebody. It just means that somebody is going to be the leader. They always have to be the leader somehow, in some way, because somebody got to get held accountable. That's what it's for, right? When something go bad or when there needs to be change or adaptability, you got to look at somebody and say, hey, what are we going to do? Instead of both people looking at each other like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. There has to be a clear leader. Like I don't know. Anyway, uh, Heiss may delegate and empower people more than many CEOs, but Wires cut cute claim that he is the boss that isn't strikes me as somewhat misleading. As I discussed with Jenna McGregor when she interviewed me for the Washington Post article, she wrote on the chain, Heiss is using his power and his position at the top of the pecking order to institute new structure, which seems like a good idea, at least based on what I learned about it. In fact, this kind of claim that an organization is non-hierarchical because the top dog will his or her power to push greater responsibility and accountability down to lower level is also saying hype about other companies, including IDEO and W.L. Gore. Yes, when people are given decision making power and have the requisite confidence and skills, leaders do not need to monitor or coach them as closely. But there is still a hierarchy, and certain people have more decision authority than others. In short, if you can find a group of people or dogs about but without a hierarchy, I want to hear about it. Yes, power and status differences are sometimes reduced, but hierarchy is in fact of organizational life. Absolutely, hierarchy is not going anywhere. It's needed, right? From the macro to the micro, right? It's always going to exist. Organization and people need hierarchy. Well, there is no doubt that some hierarchies are better designed than others. An interesting test of what happens when there is little or no consensus about who has more and less power. Grunfield and Tiddens describe a series of studies showing that when such agreement is absent, so the nature of the formal and informal pecking order is not clear, members become less committed to their groups, less productive and effective. Dysfunctional competition for status emerge, and coordination and cooperation suffer. And I noticed that in this article, a lot of I hear power keeps being brought up because really that's what it's about. I talk about it when it comes to relationships, right? Really, it's all about, and that's what we see in modern relationship now because that's why people feel empowered. They feel empowered because of money, right? Because money yields a certain amount of power, but it doesn't will you complete absolute power because you still got to have some kind of skill set. You still got to have some kind of intelligence, right? So typically, those are going to make the great leaders, right? The ones that who are decisive, the one that has foresight, right? So those are going to be your better leaders, and it doesn't matter how much money that you have, right? So it's some people out there with a lot of money, but still not great leaders. So I keep noticing, so power keeps coming up, like because at the end of the day, people need somebody to answer to, right? Let's see. Let's go to and oh, that's the end, right? So I think they made some interesting points. Similar to the last article, hierarchy is definitely needed. It's going to naturally occur. Trying to get rid of it, and you will see what happened. But naturally, people, like they kept bringing power, people are going to naturally gravitate to someone who is competent, to someone who seems like they know what they're doing and what they're talking about. Naturally, people are going to gravitate towards that. So even if you try to intentionally take away hierarchy, it's still going to exist no matter what. All right. All right. So let's wrap things up with my I saved the best for last. All right. For my piece of evidence number 3 of why hierarchy is needed. I've been talking about it. We're now about to touch on it. Is simply biological. Right. So for my last article, it comes from a platform called Very Well Mind. I want to say I've used this before, maybe not. It's simply talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar with it. And if you're not, I want to make you familiar with it right now. Okay. So, literally, biologically, it's certain things that we need, and there's a hierarchy or a pecking order to those needs. Right. So, now this is more so than social, right? But I think it still lends itself to the social aspect because, of course, when we go out in the world, we still have these needs that we're going to always have at the forefront of our minds. So it says Maslow believed that physiological and psychological needs motivate our action. So it prompts our behavior. And that's what I was talking about as far as like the social aspect. So when we go out into the world, there's certain needs that we're trying to get met, right? Now, there's a range, particularly based off of gender, based off of culture and other aspects, right? Et cetera, right? So everybody's going to differ. It's going to be a different scale for everybody. But let's get into it. So Abraham Maslow, hierarchy of needs is one of the best known theories of motivation. Maslow theory states that our actions are motivated by certain physiological, psychological need to progress from basic to complex. That scale I was talking about, right? Abraham Maslow first introduced the concept of a hierarchy of needs in his 1943 paper titled A Theory of Human Motivation, and again in his subsequent book, Motivation and Personality. This hierarchy suggests that people are motivated to fulfill basic needs before moving on to other more advanced needs. While some of the existing schools of thought at the time, such as psychoanalysis and behaviorism, tended to focus on problematic behaviors, Maslow was more interested in learning about what makes people happy and what they do to achieve that aim. As a humanist, Maslow believed that people have an inborn desire to be self-actualized, that is, to be all they can be. To achieve this ultimate goal, however, a number of more basic needs need to be met. This includes the need for food, safety, love, and self-esteem. Absolutely, right? Our first immediate needs, right, is to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, find shelter, right? We want love. We want to feel good about ourselves, right? And as I mentioned in the previous video, and I had some comments on it, I'm still sticking to my case there. There's only one kind of love, and that's unconditional love. Okay. Until somebody prove otherwise, I'm still sticking to that. All right. Maslow believed that these needs are similar to instincts and play a major role in motivating behavior. There are 5 different levels of Maslow hierarchy of needs, starting at the lowest level, known as physiological needs. So physiological needs include those that are vital to survival. Some examples of physiological needs include food, water, breathing, homeostasis. In addition to the basic requirement of nutrition, air, and temperature regulation, physiological needs also include shelter and clothing. Maslow included sexual reproduction in this level of the hierarchy as well, since it is essential to the survival and propagation of the species. So, yes, we need sex, right? We know on the most basic level we need sex because, of course, in order to procreate and keep our species going. So there's literally a drive in us, a sexual desire through our hormones, right? That makes sure that we keep our species going, right? Now, of course, there's still debate and argument about who's more sexual, who wants sex more, men or women. But we'll continue to be debating that. But at the end of the day, wanting to have sex and sexual desire is natural. It's one of our physiological needs. Security and safety needs. At the second level of Maslow hierarchy, the needs start to become a bit more complex. At this level, the needs for security and safety become primary. People want control and order in their lives. Some of these basic security and safety needs include financial security, health and wellness, safety against accident and injury. So you start looking at life from protecting yourself. And to me, it's not just physical protection, but it's also mental and emotional protection. Like we have to guard ourselves from people who are trying to hurt us mentally and emotionally, right? And then you have love and belonging. The social needs in Maslow hierarchy include love, acceptance, and belonging. At this level, the need for emotional relationship drives human behavior. Some of the things that satisfy this need include friendships, romantic attachments, family relationships, social groups, community groups, church and religious organizations. So the social aspect is very much a need because we are social people, right? So we need to feel like we belong to something, right? So when you're in a situation where you don't feel connected to people, that can lead to psychological issues, right? So that's the reason why people will join religions, will join fraternities and sororities and things of that nature. We love to feel connected and feel like we are similar to somebody or that we're heard. So, and then you got esteem needs. At the fourth level in Maslow hierarchy is the need for appreciation and respect. Once the needs at the bottom three levels have been satisfied, the esteem needs begin to play a more prominent role in motivating behavior. At this level, it becomes increasingly important to gain respect and appreciation of others. People have a need to accomplish things, then have their effort recognized. In addition to the need for feelings of accomplishment and prestige, esteem needs include such things as self-esteem and personal worth. Everybody I know relates to this, right? Now, most people probably didn't know of these five different levels, but as I'm reading this, you definitely can see which one is more important to you. I think we all are on the same page when it comes to food, shelter, and things of that nature. But the fact that you want to be recognized, you want when you do something, you want someone to say thank you, right? So how we feel about ourselves and how other people feel about us is so important to our self-esteem, to our self-worth. So this makes so much sense. And then self-actualization needs at the very peak of Maslow hierarchy are the self-actualization needs. Self-actualizing people are self-aware, concerned with personal growth, less concerned with the opinions of others, and interested in fulfilling their potential. What a man can be, he must be, Maslow explained, referring to the need people have to achieve their full potential as human beings. Maslow said of self-actualization, it may be loosely described as the full use or exploitation of talents, capabilities, potentialities, etc. Such people seem to be fulfilling themselves and to be doing the best that they are capable of doing. They are people who have developed or are developing to the full stature of which they capable of. Now, I think this being the fifth level is actually perfect because to me, this is speaking on purpose, right? So, what is my purpose for being here? Like, that could be spiritual, that could be religious, that could just be reality, right? I said, well, I'm here to do this because this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm currently doing, right? So, I think this is more the spiritual realm right here, right? So, because this is subjective and not objective, all right? So, if you haven't heard of these five tiers or Maslow of needs, you should definitely check it out more because, of course, he got more work on this. But I just wanted to show you that because I want you to hear how there's a hierarchy even to the things that we need in our lives, right? Personally or socially. All right. So, man, let's get into my closing. So, hopefully, I was convincing enough to you with the piece of evidence that I provided of why we need hierarchy. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, I don't think most people would disagree with the fact that we need a hierarchy. In our families, we have a hierarchy. At our jobs, we have a hierarchy. In large scale organization, there's hierarchy. In small scale, or like everywhere we go, there's a hierarchy, right? So I don't think many people would disagree with that. Now, thing that I think we will constantly battle with or debate about is whether the hierarchies that are put in place intentionally or happens to just evolve naturally, whether or not they're good for the just of society for most people, right? So we know that when it comes to a racial hierarchy that's intentionally put in place to demonize people and make people inferior, right? So that we need to dismantle, absolutely. When it comes to class, right? There's something that we can put in place to make things more equitable, right? Because remember, equality doesn't exist. So we definitely can clean up or improve on the hierarchies that we have. But please note that hierarchies will always be with us. All right. So it's it's just based on, okay, who has the power and how much power are we spreading around. I've already mentioned when it comes to relationships are about power and control, right? So the reason why so many people are struggling to maintain long-term relationship is because people are jockeying for power and control. Now, we might not want to admit this, but this is what we see, this is what we hear, right? So this is the reality that is upon us. All right. So this is kind of what people fought for, the freedom, right? So it is what it is. But, hopefully I made the case. All right. As always, man, go pick up the books. You know what I mean? Go pick up the merch, all that good stuff. Right. Uh, and I am you, you are me. Love always, love eternal. The worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I think I made that case, baby. All right. Deuces.